Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, sharp insights into today's American voter. The electorate is very diverse, but substantial polling data shows a general trend toward the middle. Nathan Shrader from Millsaps College is here to sort it all out. Also, abortion from the statistical perspective. A panel of scientists examined the numbers and the potential impact if Mississippi wins its Supreme Court case. And that's all coming up this morning on Mississippi Insight. Two new polls by three reliable institutions paint a very interesting picture of American voters. The electorate appears to be sitting squarely in the middle on some key issues, despite deep political divisions and reservations about the economy. Our guest this morning wrote about these polls for the Clarion Ledger, and Dr. Nathan Shrader joins us now by Zoom. He teaches politics and government at Millsaps College, and he directs the American Studies program there. Dr. Shrader, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
Always glad to be back with you, Byron.
Doc, one of the polls you highlighted was conducted by the Harvard Center for American Political Studies and the Harris poll. Among those findings, a 57% majority of voters believes that the economy is on the wrong track. 87% are very or somewhat concerned about the rising inflation, and there's strong support for both the president's social spending plan and the just passed infrastructure package. Talk about those findings and what they say about voter sentiment right now.
Well, first of all, Byron, the poll released by Harvard and the Harris poll together, to me, was one of the most extensive and in-depth in terms of probing what is it the American voters are actually thinking right now, right at this second, about the big picture issues and how those things all link together. They did a phenomenal job, I think, with their methodology, but also with the types of issues and the specific questions they were getting at. They weren't getting so far into the weeds that the average voter who's being surveyed there was going to be lost and incapable of really providing thorough and well thought out answers. So first of all, that poll, I think, is really one of the best snapshots into American politics that I've seen in a while. Now, one of the things, as you mentioned there's a great amount of consternation among voters over the economy, but one of the great mysteries in all this right now is if you look at the economic indicators, as far as the stock market goes, the unemployment rate, many of the other variables that the White House has been talking about, voters ought to likely have a more favorable view of the economy and its trajectory right now. But those inflation rates, particularly when it relates to the everyday things like the gas prices in the grocery store and the perceptions of Christmas and Thanksgiving related expenditures costing more, I think that's really dragging down the confidence in the economy that the White House was really hoping, and that the Democrats in Congress are really hoping would be there right now.
And when you talk altogether about not only just the economy, but the infrastructure plan and the Build Back Better plan, the human infrastructure plan, why is there support for that, but at the same time, they think we're on the wrong track?
No, this is the question that the folks in the White House are trying to sort out the answer to. But not only that, but the answer, but how do they get around this? Because there's robust support out there for most of the major pillars of the Build Back Better package, the human infrastructure package. The support for the physical infrastructure package was very high, and it cuts across party lines, as do most of the major pillars of Build Back Better, the social spending side. So it's very possible that once those things are passed, if they're passed, that will help voters maybe start to think that things are on the better track. But something that's really key to consider as we look towards the midterm elections next year, there's typically in American politics a pendulum swing where the party that's in power in the White House experiences in their first midterm election what Barack Obama had called a shellacking, if you remember his first midterm election cycle in 2010. And part of this is just the way Americans tend to recalibrate their politics, because the Americans do prefer a balance in terms of the one party controlling the White House and another party controlling Congress. So some of this is typical of the midterm cycle. But some of it is something of a mystery to policymakers, because the economic indicators for a large part are looking better and better, except for the inflation piece, But people are on board with the Build Back Better major pillars and that infrastructure plan that passed, but they're still not feeling the difference. So I think, Byron, a critical thing, there's a sharp difference between the exact reality of every policy issue and how it plays out in American political life and the way voters perceive that it's playing out and affecting them. And I think that has something to do with that exact question that you asked.
Also from that Harvard-Harris poll, former President Donald Trump remains the first choice for almost half of Republicans for the 2024 presidential nomination. About 60% would ultimately vote to nominate him again. That's a remarkable finding after his 2020 loss. 3/4 of American voters oppose defunding the police, and 80% think major cities need more police in their communities. Let's talk about President Trump and where he stands as far as the polling right now. He pretty much leads as far as running for 2024.
He does. And Byron, you and I have been on enough interviews and shows together over the last several years that, I don't necessarily like to make flat out predictions of who's going to win this or who will be nominated this far out. But I firmly believe that unless he is in prison, because, he is under investigation, unless he's no longer with us, Donald Trump's going to be the Republican nominee. I think those are the only two ways to stop him from getting that nomination. There, as that Harvard-Harris poll showed, there's no other Republican who was tested there against him that even comes remotely close. He still has the enthusiasm of the base of the Republican Party. And we know primary elections, who comes out to vote in those primaries and caucuses, it's the enthusiastic party base voters, and they're very much with him. That is still his party, and there's no, as I wrote in the Clarion Ledger piece, there's no heir or successor to him at this point. That some want that role, like Mark DeSantis out of Florida, maybe Greg Abbott out of Texas. They really desire that spot or that role right now, but he's not ready to give that up, and the voters in the party aren't ready to push him aside there either.
3/4 of American voters oppose defunding the police, and 80% think that major cities need more police in their communities, not less. And crime is a huge factor for many Americans, isn't it? So how are you seeing that?
Well, I see this is the Achilles heel of the Democrats, and I'll tell you who knows that. Joe Biden knows that. Last November, after the presidential election, Joe Biden was weighing in on a conference call with, I believe it was with a group of African-American activists. And he acknowledged that one of the things that hurt them in certain districts and states during the 2020 election was how the Republicans were able to link Democrats to the defund the police movement. Now, to be fair, that the Democratic Party is not in favor of that defund the police movement, and neither is the president or the Speaker of the House or almost anyone in the party. But the Republicans have been very successful at linking that to them. But here's again where it gets really tricky for the Democrats. Their base does want them to articulate some vision of police reform, but at the same time, whatever they do, they have to be careful that it doesn't get labeled rightly or wrongly as part of the defund the police piece, or they will be that will be a flashpoint issue in the midterms for sure.
And this one on climate change, 71% say it is a very or somewhat serious problem, but just as many respondents prefers to gradually transition to alternative vehicles rather than eliminating all traditional vehicles. Your thoughts on those results?
Byron, this was one of the issues that actually led me to write this op-ed about the American voters being far closer to the center than they're given credit for in the popular narrative right now. So what that issue tells me, or the way that polling worked, it tells me, is that Americans see that this is a significant problem, climate change. But they also know and also believe that there are incremental and gradual approaches that they want to take to fix it. They're not looking for a radical, rapid change, right? They want to maintain a high standard of living as American citizens, but they also want to address the problem. So if any political party moves to act what's perceived as too rapidly, too quickly on this, there's going to be some blowback from the electorate. The electorate's not going to disagree that climate change is a serious problem that needs to be addressed, but where the disconnect is that they don't want to rapidly shift in a way that greatly reduces the standard of living that they enjoy here in the United States of America.
And over 80% say that illegal immigration is a very or somewhat serious problem right now. How did this question fall along party lines?
Well, so this, again, a fascinating and complicated topic, because there are some policy experts who believe that the immigration issue is not necessarily spiraling out of control as the narrative suggests. But the reason that is an important question and set of responses in the poll is because it tells you that Americans it is a bipartisan issue in the sense that Americans believe that it's a problem. So, Byron, I want to just be careful here. I didn't write about those specific topics to say we should only do what the majority believes. That's not my point. But what I want everyone to realize is that the majority of the voters are actually closer to each other on a lot of these issues than they're given credit for. That's not to say that we should always do just the thing that is the most popular. But on that immigration issue, there's no doubt about it. It's a bipartisan position that voters in the United States right now believe that we need to reduce the flow coming across the border and to impose stricter regulations. So that's not so much a partisan position as it's often presented by some of the pundits.
And the other poll that you looked at is one that the Pew Research Center talked about how they broke down the ideological divides among American voters. Explain that one.
Byron, this Pew survey was one of the most extensive I've ever seen. The full report, your viewers can go to the Pew Research Center site. It's a lengthy report, but it's written in a way that anyone can pick up on what they're doing and understand it. It's not just written for the numbers people out there. It's a good piece of information for your viewers to look at. What the Pew survey does is it acknowledges two things. There are deep divisions in the United States on political questions and partisan issues. We kind of know that, and it confirms it again for us. But it also shows that a lot of those deep divisions exist within the parties. Now, here's what I was calling in the piece the worst kept secret in American politics. There are far more Americans in the center who are willing to negotiate, compromise, and moderate their views if they think it's in the national interest, or if they think it's going to make the country better. And so what that poll found, broad national survey found, was there's roughly, I'm going to just ballpark this here, 15% of voters on the far left of the left end of the spectrum, the liberal end. They're 15% on the far right, the conservative end of the spectrum. They're never going to change, and they're inflexible. They're not compromising, and they're not interested in it. They're not interested in negotiation and moderation. But there's some wiggle room elsewhere. And there's this big chunk in the middle, nearly 40%, who might identify loosely as a Democrat or a Republican or as an independent even, but they're willing to, for the public interest, compromise and work with other people who maybe don't agree with them on everything. And I guess, Byron, the significance of this for me as a political scientist is that those numbers are significant. It's significant that 40% are in that category, because it shows that the American people are not as divided as the politicians we elect are. And that's a key takeaway for me.
Dr. Nathan Shrader, Millsaps College, always a pleasure talking with you, and a very good topic here. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome back. Attorney General Lynn Fitch heads to the U.S. Supreme Court this week to advocate for Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban. It's a case that's widely seen as a direct and real challenge to the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling. And a ruling in the state's favor could hand over law and policy on abortion rights to state governments. This month, the panel of scientists in various fields discussed the potential impact of such a landmark ruling. The nonprofit Sciline organized the panel, and we wanted to know what the impact of a Mississippi court win could mean to smaller, poorer states such as ours.
That many states are poised to ban abortion if the Supreme Court doesn't uphold Roe. And those states, somewhere between 8 and 15 will end the right to abortion in their state if the court no longer says that abortion is federally protected. And all of the consequences that we found in the Turnaway study of the consequences for people who cannot access a legal abortion and carry the pregnancy to term will happen for those people. There will be economic consequences, there'll be physical health consequences, and life consequences like not being able to have a child later under better circumstances. So it's not going to produce the best results for children to ban abortion either. As I think Dr. Prager pointed out, is that many people will get their abortion even if it's not legal. Some of the decline that Amanda Stevenson showed in clinic-based abortions is because people are ordering pills online or getting pills some other way. There are many organizations, and they're not all illegal, where you can order pills that are the same pills you would get at a clinic. So we don't really have a great handle on how much the decline in clinic-based abortions is because people are already trying to get around the, I think, restrictions that make it harder to get to clinics and are trying to provide their own abortions.
Again, we really need to keep in mind on, what the actual impact of this is. This isn't just a political decision if Roe is overturned in Mississippi or anywhere else. What we're doing if we're saying patients are denied access to abortion is we're saying we require you to have a baby and all of the risks attendant in that, and to carry that pregnancy to term or find some inaccessible way to access abortion. But we're really saying we think that we are requiring continuation of pregnancy and parenthood is what those laws are saying. And I think we need to understand that has a real life medical implication, not just social implications and political implications.
I did estimate how many additional people would die from pregnancy-related causes in the United States in the absence of abortion altogether. So if nobody was able to get their abortions, how much would the number of people dying go up? And it would go up by 21% overall. The increase would be concentrated, though, among Black people. So the number of people dying from pregnancy-related causes where Black would go up by a third. So we would see substantial increases in pregnancy-related death in the absence of abortion in this country. And these are the most conservative estimates I could generate. I mean, I took everything down to the very bottom. So the actual increases would likely be greater. It's important to note, however, that these increases in death assume that nobody gets their abortions. So no one's self-managing, no one's traveling to other places to get abortions, everyone's staying pregnant and then experiencing delivery and birth. Although I do include assumptions that some people will miscarry, and so because that does happen. So this increase would occur if nobody could get their abortions. What this means is that if organizations are able to help people access abortion via helping them travel like abortion funds do, or by helping them terminate pregnancies via self-management with medication abortion, then that would make the increase in pregnancy-related death less. So basically, there are ways to reduce the mortality consequences of abortion bans, and they basically look like helping people get around them.
Our thanks to Rick Weiss and Sideline for that panel discussion. Hinds County picks a sheriff when Mississippi Insight continues. Hinds County finally has a new sheriff. Tyree Jones won the special election runoff against interim Sheriff Marshawn Chrysler Tuesday. Jones pulled in 60% of the vote. The longtime law enforcement veteran celebrated with family and supporters at Hal & Mal's in Jackson Tuesday night. He spoke with reporters about taking office, filling the space left by Lee Vance's death from COVID-19 back in August.
I look forward to working collectively with you all during this administration, continuing to make Hinds County a safe place. As we know, the people want to feel safe. that's just not in the city of Jackson. I plan to be a sheriff for all of Hinds County. We have to address the issues that we're plagued with in the city of Jackson. We also have to address the issues in rural and unincorporated Hinds County as well. And last but definitely not least, we have to address the issues that we're currently plagued with the Hinds County detention facilities and the consent decree that we're currently under as well. So these are the things that I look forward to addressing, bringing the right people in with the right knowledge and expertise, along with my administration, to move the Hinds County Sheriff's Office in a very successful way as well.
Tyree Jones will have a lot on his plate from the start of his tenure. Federal Judge Carlton Reeves has given Hinds County 21 days to explain why the feds shouldn't take control of the problem-ridden detention center in Raymond. We'll have a final word in a moment. Big thanks to Dr. Nathan Shrader for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.